Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Martin. I'm NCEDA's Program Manager, and we're excited to have you with us. Before getting started, I'd like to review the logistics of this webinar platform. You'll see on the screen a few important logistics to read through as attendees. To reiterate, all attendees are muted and will stay muted during the presentation. We will have a live Q&A after the presentation. And at the top of the screen, you should see view options. You should choose speaker video as your viewing option. It offers just kind of the best way to see us. During the live Q&A, during that segment and anytime during the presentations, you can type your question into the Q&A box. To access this option, you'll click Q&A at the bottom of your screen and then type in your question. These questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent out to all registrants to use as a resource. At this time, I'd like to introduce NCEDA President, Dr. Patricia Mitchell, who will be offering welcoming remarks and introducing our presenters.
Thank you, Emily, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our latest NCEDA webinar. Today, we're featuring tools and tips for making the most of today's technology. We believe you'll find the topic especially relevant in light of how the pandemic quickly changed the way that economic developers are executing their leadership duties. I'll introduce today's panel in just a moment. First, I would like to thank NCEDA's patron and annual sponsors. These are the organizations and companies whose generosity makes programs like this possible. You'll see their names and logos on your screen, and we're certainly grateful for their support today and every day. Professional development is at the heart of NCEDA's mission. Since our founding in 1966, education, training, and skills development have been central to the value that we provide North Carolina economic development practitioners. And as recent months have demonstrated, economic developers play a vital role for their communities and the state through both good and difficult times. We have to be ready for anything. And even during a deadly pandemic, our work continues and our leadership and our service are more important than ever. Well before anyone heard of COVID-19, technology was changing the economic development landscape in many ways. The pandemic has accelerated the importance of the new hardware, software, and mobile apps, along with the expertise to use them effectively. Our panelists today will share their considerable insight and knowledge on how these tools are impacting the work of economic developers. Our moderator, Alan Sandoval, has held numerous technology-related positions at the North Carolina Department of Commerce since 2007. He's currently the Director of Business Technology Services at Commerce. Alan represents Commerce on the state's Information Coordinating Council and has served as a representative to the State Government User Committee's executive team. Penny Whiteheart is a longtime North Carolina economic development leader. She is the Executive Vice President at the Piedmont Triad Partnership. Her expertise includes marketing, cluster strategies, talent development, and strategic planning at the local and regional levels. Robert Van Giens has more than 2 decades of experience as an economic development practitioner and thought leader. He's currently president and CEO of the Fayetteville-Cumberland County Economic Development Corporation. He previously led business recruitment and job creation efforts in Rowan County and Stanley County, as well as the town of Waterbury, Connecticut. And finally, we have David Dean. David is with the IBM Corporation in the Triangle, where he is an agile project manager. He has 18 years of marketing, public relations, and communications experience, including work at Brasco, an award-winning marketing agency in the Triangle. David has developed digital content, go-to-market strategies, customer surveys, and brand audits for clients in the healthcare, technology, and entertainment industries. We're grateful to all these experts for serving on today's panel, sharing their time with us, and sharing their expertise. So at this time, I will turn our virtual podium over to our moderator, Alan Sandoval, and thank you to Alan and the rest of you for being with us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a good day so far. Let's see. Never goes in real life like it does in training, does it? There we go. So welcome to your crash course on cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a very broad field. It covers not only computers, but building security as well. So to get started, I think some of y'all may have seen this quote before. It's a famous quote from John Chambers, Cisco CEO. There are only two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those who don't know that they have been hacked. Every day in North Carolina, we're seeing a lot of attempts to get into our services, to compromise our users. So I'm going to give you all some tips and tricks for how you can improve your cybersecurity. So what is cybersecurity? Computer security, cybersecurity, or information technology security is the protection of computer systems and networks from the theft of or damage to their hardware, software, or electronic data, as well as from the disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, cybersecurity is not only software, meaning firewalls, antivirus, and things like that. It's also physical security, so protecting access to your building, ensuring that locked doors are always remain locked, and then also putting in systems of access control like badges and things like that, so that you know that the person in your building is supposed to be there. So what's at stake? Everything from interruption in business services to loss of intellectual property and trade secrets, loss of competitive advantage, which is hugely important, especially in economic development, reputation loss, financial loss and/or fines, and identity theft. We've seen several examples in the past couple of years that highlight each of these. And I think most of you might recall South Carolina had a data breach with their Department of Revenue. That breach cost them tens of millions of dollars, not only to remediate the issue, but to also buy identity theft protection for all of the residents of South Carolina. Recently in the news, you've also seen Durham County at city and county government. They had a ransomware attack. Well, that rendered their systems unable to be used and also put their data at risk of never being able to be recovered. Fortunately, they had the appropriate measures in place to be able to move backwards and worked with state IT and with National Guard to recover that. And then another example, recently we were working with someone and their email system was compromised and they started sending us malicious email. So we, the department and the state, had to blacklist that organization so that we did not risk being compromised ourselves. And during that blacklisting, the impacted organization then had to change the way they did business. They weren't able to as seamlessly communicate with us as they normally would have been. So what are some of the types of attacks? Phishing and spear phishing are probably some of the more common that you'll hear about. They are when you receive emails. Phishing is typically a little bit more broad. Spear phishing targets an individual, but you get an email that has a link or an attachment that has some type of malicious intent, whether it's just to harvest your user credentials or it unloads a packet on your computer. That's largely how things like malware and ransomware attacks get in, how user accounts get compromised. You'll also see social engineering. That's basically just trying to use people's human nature against them. They talk you up. How's your office? Do you like your office? You know, well, what's your security like? Ours is really bad. That type of thing. Then you also have ransomware. Denial of service attacks are typically when they try to take down your website or your networks by flooding it with requests. And then website defacements. Those are typically when they get into your website and they replace it with something that they want to be up there. The state of North Carolina had several of those incidents a few years ago as a result of HB2. So what can your organization do? Adopt a security mindset. That means be critical of everything you get when you're thinking about it. Invest in training employees. It's been proven over and over again that the #1 way to reduce cybersecurity incidents is to train your staff to recognize all the telltale signs of a potential hacking event. Establish and regularly review policies and procedures. That can include password requirements and then also periodic changing of passwords. Work with your vendors to ensure that websites, servers, computers, and other application services are up to date and patched properly. That's often the way that people get in, is they find these older servers that have been sitting out there, or older softwares that are sitting on your systems, and they use that to get into your systems. And then, very importantly, back up your data so that if you have a ransomware attack, you can recover to a point in time prior to the ransomware attack and not lose any of your valuable data. So what can you do as an individual? Again, adopt the security mindset. Learn how to look at an email and think, I don't know that this looks right. So maybe I shouldn't click on the link, or maybe I should notify security so they can take a look at it. Lock your workstation when you're away. One of the best things we've taught people is to push the Windows key plus the L key. That will lock the workstation in one fell swoop without having to do Control-Alt-Delete. Only use devices that you or your company purchased. If you find a thumb drive in a drawer somewhere, don't necessarily trust it. Or if you find one in the parking lot, often that's a way that they're getting into your systems because they've intentionally placed that. And most importantly, if you see something suspicious, say something, whether it be to your manager, to your IT professional, to your vendors. Notify them that something doesn't look right. Okay, so quickly, since email is one of the easiest ways to get into your systems, how do you identify a malicious email? Look for spelling and grammar mistakes. Senders often imply a sense of urgency. Hey, I really need you to look into this now. I've got a meeting and I need to get this taken care of. Is the email expected or unexpected? Did you expect to get a DocuSign request from Jane? Did you expect to get that Teams invite? If not, then you might want to start looking at it a little more critically. If you've got a link you're unsure of, you can hover your mouse over it and it will show you the URL behind it. Oftentimes you'll see something like click here or something like that, and then you open up or mouse over the URL and it says badplace.com. That's one way to look at it. And then if you're really just unsure, call the sender and ask them to authenticate that they sent the email. A lot of times, and what we ran into with that previous issue with the outside organization, was the people compromised the user account. So when we sent the email back that said, hey, did you mean to send this to me? The bad guys responded and said, of course, it's legitimate. Just go ahead and click on it and let's get this taken care of. It compromised several of our users here as well. So that's just an example of a sample malicious email that we received here. I wanted y'all to have that for just an example. What to do if you think you're a victim: report it, watch for changes to your accounts, change your passwords immediately, but go to another device if you think the device has been compromised, and then watch for other signs individually for identity theft. So monitor your bank accounts, things like that. Some quick metrics from DIT. So last week we had 15 billion with a B events. Out of that, there were 318 total security events. On average, we see about 16% of our emails that are of a malicious nature. 9,800 of those over a 5-week period were, on average, were phishing emails, and about 386,000 of those, on average, were spam emails. Because we had such a limited time today, these are some other common scenarios that you can follow and see. This is from DIT, so what to do while you're traveling to ensure cybersecurity or practice good cybersecurity. Working remotely is very important now to work on these things. Some teleconferencing tips. And then specific to coronavirus, anytime there's an event in the news, you can expect hackers to be taking advantage of that. And then finally, some resources for you. The North Carolina Department of Information Technology constantly updates what they're doing, what they're seeing, some of their strategies. They have a monthly newsletter that comes out of the Enterprise Security and Risk Management Office that has good information on it. And then finally, this last one is the North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association. So that's an association of local government information technology professionals. So if you are somewhere and you're having questions and you want to know in your county who to talk to, that's a great resource for finding a local IT professional that you can discuss your concerns and issues with. With that, there's my contact information. If you ever have a question, please feel free to contact me. And with that, I will turn it over to Penny.
Thanks very much, Alan and Pat and NCEDA. I'm looking forward to talking and hearing back from you all about virtual meetings. I wonder if you can remember back when having a video conference was like a special occasion, and I used to look forward to them. We might even get ready for them in a special way. And I know a lot of us have, you know, Zoom fatigue or whatever your platform is now, and that probably we're spending a good part of our day interacting virtually. But I do believe it's here to stay, that even after we get back to more regular in-person meetings and larger meetings, that this experience that will mean that we use virtual meetings and virtual interactions even more. I think that it creates a better experience certainly than a phone call or a conference call. There's an increase in accountability. I'm sure we've all heard that maybe 93% of our communication is nonverbal. And so certainly being able to see someone and have a better handle on their tone of voice or their affect is giving us a richer experience. And we're all in relationship building businesses. And so I do believe that this virtual platform will have long lasting impacts on the way that we do business. And then of course there's just the savings of time and money in travel, or even just driving across town to a meeting, if we think that this might be a possible substitute for that. So I'd be interested maybe at the end to hear if you all think that that this will be an engagement, or maybe there'll be a backlash. But I wanted to talk to y'all about setting up virtual meetings, a little bit about security and best practices in doing this. And I wanted to encourage us to think about, you know, different types of meetings that we have, and that we would have a different level of preparation and maybe structure for those. So a casual meeting with your teammates to review some ideas or share an update or a status from a meeting or an activity. We might think of these as very casual, just like shouting down the hall if you do that in your office. Then there may be more structured meetings that are still informal, maybe just among your staff or some very close allies or partners. And then of course, we'd have to think about really formal meetings, maybe where business is being conducted, financial or other critical decisions are being made and need to be documented and assured. And then finally, in our business, you know, we could be having some very sensitive and confidential interactions, maybe a client meeting or a real estate negotiation, or even in HR, maybe a performance review. So I'll come back to this and think about this in terms of some best practices and some security. I wanted to be sure and mention that if you're looking at a webinar or a live streaming event, even a panel presentation like we're doing now, you might need to consider some different platforms than what we'll talk about today, because that's really outside of the scope of what we're going to cover in this brief time. So as you're working on your meeting, you need to also think about your participants, your attendees. And I'm sure that we've all helped our board members and our vendors and others up this steep learning curve, and we've seen the different adaptability that people have with platforms like virtual meetings. And in addition to just where the person is in this, is the device and the technology that they're going to use to engage with you. So you may have made a beautiful presentation with maybe you're going to present a plan for a new industrial park, and you have some engineering drawings and some 3D renderings, but then one of your key decision makers joins the meeting on their smartphone. And so you're really going to need to think about and anticipate the consumption environment, I'll say, of your attendees, and that may impact what you're able to accomplish. Or you might just ask them, hey, could you be at a good size monitor, so that we're gonna review some details together. I'm sure you've also come into issues with bandwidth and device quality. I seem to do business with people who like to participate from their deck, and sometimes maybe the Wi-Fi is going to give out. I've noticed a lot of times iPads seem to freeze up more than others. So just like any rigorous computer program, these kinds of platforms are going to take up system resources and the internet bandwidth. And then finally, back to the confidential or the sensitive kind of meeting, we'll have to really think about, what that means in terms of who's included in the meeting, or even how that invitation goes out if it really is confidential. I wanted to provide y'all with just a very high level overview. I chose these 4 platforms as the ones that I interact the most with, and I'll disclose that I know the most about Zoom. But I would say that all 4 of these are platforms that you've probably been invited to participate in, and so you should take some time to learn them as best you can as you get the opportunity. And if you're in the market for one, there's a little bit of information here about the costs. They're fairly comparable. GoToMeeting does not have a free plan. They have, I believe, a trial period, but not just an ongoing free plan. They do have some great accessibility and unlimited cloud storage, which if you're going to be capturing and preserving your meetings, that may be something that could be important to you. I'm going to skip over WebEx because David's going to talk to you, and he's much more knowledgeable than I am. I thought it was funny. Someone referred to them as the Graybeard. I think I saw it was founded in 1995. So maybe one of the legacy and long-standing video platforms. I do want to talk about Zoom just because it has had this tremendous increase over the last 2 months that we've all been working from home. And so even if it's not the platform that you choose for your organization, you've probably been engaged as you are today with NCEDA. Zoom, I think the reason that it has had such high adoption these last few weeks is that it's very intuitive. Screen sharing, especially, I've noticed is simple compared to others that I've participated in. So if you're having a team meeting or a staff meeting, it might be great if people could take turns putting documents up or drafts that you're going to collaborate on. I know as a meeting scribe that it's kind of unpleasant if the meeting scribe is always the same person, which just seems like in some platforms that's kind of limited. I wanted to mention annotating and whiteboarding with Zoom as well. Something that I've used quite a lot, again, looking at pieces of land or potential developments, is that participants are very easily able to draw or indicate on the screen. And so that if that's something that you do with your clients or with your staff, that might be worthwhile for you. Zoom also accommodates breakout rooms. So if you had a larger meeting and you just wanted to give it a more intimate feel, then maybe a couple of staff people could lead breakout discussions to review some of the presentations or work. And that might be a workaround, especially during this time when we're limited on the meeting size. And then finally, file sharing during the meetings is something else that has been very helpful. While we're all disconnected and maybe you're talking about different versions of something that you've each seen, that you can just write in the meeting, distribute to everyone a copy of the same document and say, this is what we're going to talk about. Of course, Microsoft Teams is also growing really quickly. I think you can't see my number here. That's 37% increase in March. And just really quickly, there is a free plan available right now for Microsoft Teams. There's some implication that may not last past this year. It's also part of Office 365, so many of you may already have it embedded, if not fully deployed in your environments. It is cited for ease of quick meetings, maybe just getting people together on the fly, again, maybe for colleagues or staff. And it is taking the place of Skype for Business. And I know a lot of us have used Skype in the past. And so Microsoft may also be a possibility, especially if it's already there. These are some of the ones I won't take time to talk about today. Meet is replacing Google Hangouts. I believe it's only available if you subscribe to the G Suite right now. Ring Central, I just learned today, actually is a repackaging of Zoom. So you'll be very familiar with Ring Central if you're familiar with Zoom. Just to keep moving, I wanted to talk a little bit about security because there's been so much coverage, especially about Zoom security breaches. And they've done a lot over the last 3 or 4 weeks to address the concerns that have been raised. And so I wanted to talk specifically about the kinds of virtual meetings that we mentioned and some of the settings or precautions that you could take in order to get the best security. But I also wanted to mention that in a lot of ways, security is a trade-off with accessibility. And so another thing, that I know we've struggled with is maybe some of our clients or stakeholders who aren't as technology engaged, that we might have made some choices about how to put on our meetings in order to make it easier for them. And so you just need to keep these things in mind. So I'll go through these quickly and love to talk about them at the end or hear feedback from you all if you have some security tips and tricks as well. But using a password just seems kind of obvious at this point. But I'll say back in the days when video conferencing was very rare, people were always sending links back and forth that didn't have passwords. But I hope everyone is getting used to that now. I think in a lot of cases of the Zoom bombing that I heard about in March and April were cases where people had published their video conference links in public places or even on social media. Allowing attendees to record, I would suggest just always keeping that turned off. And if someone has a reason to record the meeting, probably should be discussed, certainly with the host and maybe with the whole group. And then just making sure you keep your client software upgraded because companies are, using that to patch and upgrade security issues as they learn about them. So if you were concerned about security, if it wasn't just you and a colleague getting together, then these are some what I would call kind of basic security. And I wanted to mention in Zoom, you have the ability to set up a meeting template. And so if you wanted to set internally, maybe security level 1, 2, and 3, then you could set that up in Zoom and then just, without going through each of these features, you could have it kind of set. So really quickly, you wouldn't want people to join the meeting before the host if you were trying to keep it secure. You would keep a waiting room so that the host would manually admit every person and hopefully record their name so that everyone knows who's there. You would disable the file sharing, which I said was really helpful. And as the host, you would be prepared to disable someone's video if they started behaving in an inappropriate way. The host would know how to turn off screen sharing for attendees and that make that more difficult. And also annotation, as I mentioned, allowing people to be able to draw or post clips on the screen. And finally, locking the meeting. It seems like a great idea, but I'll say in some meetings that I've been the host and I've locked them, if people drop off and they have to call back in, it is kind of distracting. And so I'll just ask you to keep that in mind if you think you want to lock a meeting. If you want to have really serious security, then these are some things you can do. And again, they may make it difficult for some of your more casual users to participate. But I'd say certainly if there was confidential or sensitive information, then you would want to take steps like making people authenticate so that you would know exactly who was there, not sending the meeting link in ahead. You might ask people to enter the password manually and turn off annotations. I wanted to tell you some best practices that might not be related to the security. You certainly want to make sure the host is familiar. You want to have a housekeeping slide like Emily had at the beginning to tell the attendees what's going on. You always want to let people know that you're recording them if you are. And again, the host needs to keep the chat and admin panels an eye on those to make sure that any issues are taken care of. Here's just another sample housekeeping slide at a board meeting. And as an attendee, you can't say enough, learn how to mute yourself on all the different platforms so that you'll always be able to hide your environmental noise. And there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts in Zoom. Alt-A will mute and unmute yourself. I would say, just skipping through some of these, that I would say go easy on the funny backgrounds. I know maybe for your internal staff, that would be a fun thing to do, but you might consider a customized or branded one. Greater Winston-Salem Inc. has some new branding, and they've taken advantage of this virtual meeting craze to customize backgrounds for their staff so that they can get their new branding out. So I'm really excited about where we're going with virtual meetings. There's certainly a lot of drudgery to it and maybe some hilarity as well, but I think it will give us more options for the work we're doing and more tools for it as well. Now I'm going to turn it back over to NCEDA.
Hey y'all, great to be with you. It's kind of tough working without an audience response, so I won't know if some of these jokes fall flat here, but my presentation is not that one. Let's see if I can get it back. There we go. Stop, collaborate, and listen. So I'll be talking about team collaboration, applications and softwares, file sharing, and much like Vanilla Ice, you can get a lot of stuff for free, but you might end up being hung off a balcony by Suge Knight. So a lot of free tools, but also some of the cost benefits to what you pay for sometimes really influences what you get. So when it comes to collaboration tools, first start looking at what you already have. We heard people talking about Microsoft Suites today. You've got things in there. I found out the other day that Jive, my phone provider, actually gives me GoToMeeting for free as of a month or two ago. So I have that now, and I can avoid that cost. Ask yourselves too, can all your partners use it? Is this an internal thing? For us, we work with Fort Bragg, and you can just forget about anything you're going to send them beyond a PDF document as an attachment. But how can you share across platforms, work well together, and be able to truly collaborate? Because that's really the intent. If 4 out of 5 partners can get into a meeting and one can't, you're better off doing it by email. How often are you going to use this, and who's going to use it? Is this something you're going to use every day? Is it project specific? Is it mostly external work? And I think that I'm prone to this, is don't get carried away. You settle on one platform, enforce usage on it. Ask yourself, if I start my team on this, are we going to use it every day, or am I going to send somebody a message or a document? Is it going to sit out there in the ether for weeks? Quite frankly, if everyone doesn't use it and use it continuously, then you end up causing yourselves more headaches than it ultimately can be worth. So there are a lot of them out there, and it seems like more and more every day. We talked about Teams, and we will again a little bit later. We've got there's Slack and Flock and Yammer, and no, I'm not making these up, 20 other names. And what all of these try to do is create multimedia, multi-project conversation channels where you and your team, internal and external, can share documents and chat and set, in many cases, online meetings. And we'll look at some of those in a second here. On the tangent of that, there are other software applications you may have heard of or be familiar with. Some, like Basecamp, end up becoming more of a full project solution for an entity. Marketing firms often use it, where the files themselves sit along with the project work. Google Docs, people can go back and forth and collaborate along those lines. You may need something as simple as messenger apps. Even it might be within your phone system, a chat feature or your CRM. And then I'll talk about just quickly too that I think are pretty good, or one there, MindMeister being one that I'm pretty fond of. So here's an example of Teams. If you don't have it, or you do have it and you don't know it and haven't looked at it, Microsoft actually does both Yammer and Teams, and I'm sure that only one of them will be around soon. You can see you've got your different conversations on the left, and you've got the chat features in the center. You can create calls. It's really great, I think, working for a small group. As some of my team have been telecommuting, it's been the best platform of all the ones we have access to for a quick chat and or a staff meeting. Slack here, very similar. You can see projects on the left and files and conversation to the right. Moving on up to something like Basecamp, where you can see it's very much where everything in the organization happens. So this is a slightly different style and one that we use because what I found is if I start sending files back and forth to my team in Teams, then I can't find them when I need them later because they're not on our shared server. We use a shared server here with Microsoft, and we've been, if it's not there, I don't know where else to go. But this is one called MindMeister. And you can see it's mind mapping. And this can be shared and looked at in real time. It's free. You can expand it from there. The other thing, too, you can do is it's a web link. So if anybody can get to the web, they can typically get to this website. And even as I joked about Fort Bragg, you can print it off and send to folks. This allows you to add tasks and delivery dates and different parties to go ahead and be part of a branched off conversation. Just something to look at. The links will be following later. Coming back to what I said, though, you know, we talk about adding a new platform. But this is, you know, Microsoft Dynamics CRM. Many of your CRMs have in them chat and post and connection functions. So I'd say before you add something else, are you taking people away from where you want them working? I know, even for me, that it's always a challenge to get everybody to constantly be putting things into our CRM system. And for me, I want them to start there. So if I can eliminate adding something else, all the better. So with that, each of those has a different cost factor. Many are free, some free to expand, $7 a month on up to a couple hundred. And I'd say, again, look at your subscriptions. You might be able to add it on to something you already have. Talking about file sharing platforms, you know, back to our original presentation today, how secure is your data? How strong is your chain? Can you share that across partners? Some can use Dropbox, many can't. For a while, Box is preferred, others can't. And then you need to ask yourselves, as you send your employees out into remote working and or your partners are interacting with you, do you want everyone over the internet? Is this an internal thing or something you're sharing large files with the outside world? And does it integrate into your CRM? I would just say, though, that whatever you do, be careful. Think about that if you have every laptop backed up with your server on it and that gets lost somewhere, and people get into it. I recommend people to have one or preferably 2 hard drives because I've had one fail. And every month or every couple of weeks, just have somebody do a total offline backup. It avoids ransomware threats and those other types of things. I have some links in here for free encryption software. But if you're going to use a Dropbox, something like that, you want to have dual factor authentication where somebody has to verify a login through a second device. Last thing you want is your important documents being stolen. Preferably, like I do with the Microsoft platform with SharePoint, is having remote administration rights where you can delete things and pull it off somebody's computer. The bottom line is if you can't delete it once it leaves your office, do you really want it going out into the world? And that's, you know, both for employees or your own piece of equipment or with the project side of things. So a couple of them that are very popular. SharePoint, it's what we use here. It's part of the 365 suite. It does a great job of both syncing it's available online and access, or you can do it to a direct sync to the computer itself. OneDrive, the consumer version of that. Dropbox, we all know it. Personally, I find navigating always being a challenge, who I shared what with, how to download a folder, unless you back everything up. But plans jump around in pricing from $12 to a couple hundred a year. There's third-party sync softwares, and there's also some large files out there that can help people move those things around. And when I get back to the way things are changing on shared platforms or files, also looking more and more like your collaborative platforms. Here's an example just of how a SharePoint server can look that serves most of these. I know I'm going long on my time, so I'm going to run real quick into the free stuff here. Again, check your subscriptions for add-ons. If you're an eligible nonprofit and you're not in TechSoup, you should be. If you are in TechSoup, there's other discounts out there for you. Trial status can be your friend. I can't tell you the number of times I've taken something down for a specific project. There are a bunch of online tools, but be safe, be creative. Here's one that I love. The links will follow. It's iPicky. It is as good and easier to use than just about any image software suite, but it's an online-based platform. You can do some creative things too by misusing the intent of other projects here. YouTube. Yeah, you can stream live to YouTube or do YouTube video. You can use that same creator suite to download that video and never put it out there. Same thing for social media, skip and sketch. Screen capture is a great way, if you're using Google Earth, to create your own video zooming in on a project or a client site. Just a fun example here. You can pull this right off of any computer you're using. Have a Zoom call with yourself. I know it sounds weird, but you can do that, and you can do a whole screen share with yourself, download that presentation, and you've just made a video for a client going forward. These will be included in when this is distributed, but here are links for free and proven softwares, encryption, video, free audio, a couple places where you can pull those that I recommend, and we'll be sharing that there. I know I went a little deep. Last one I'll mention, if you haven't checked out Headwater Economics, some really great free community comparison data that you can pull down as well. And with that, it's amazing how fast 9 minutes goes by, at least for me. David, I believe I'm turning it over to you.
All right, there we go. I think I'm controlling it now. Let's see. Let's see. And hey, here's a little bit of life walking in. Hey everybody. No, it is not, sweetie. Give me just a second. All right, so I thought I would entertain you a little bit with my 7-year-old daughter. No, actually, with WebEx versus Zoom. So a quick thing that I've found, the CEO of Zoom stated that in March of this year, they reached 200 million daily meeting participants, both free and paid. At the end of December, they were at approximately 10 million. So that's exponential growth. As far as WebEx goes, I guess it's good that I'm presenting on the gray beard of meeting platforms because of my gray beard. Dave had 2.5 times of growth in just the US and 3.5 times of growth in Europe. So as far as setup goes, I'm just going to compare these two. Robo talked about different platforms. At Brasco, we used several different as far as collaboration tools. And I definitely encourage you to diversify what you're using. It's a good professional development tool for your staff to be able to use these different things. You never know what your partners are going to be using. So definitely look into that with your teams. But we're looking at WebEx and Zoom today. Here are some kind of differences. Participants in WebEx, they have to create a profile. It's a simple login, typical login that you see. It's really easy to do, but with Zoom, it's much easier because only the attendees, they do not have to download the app. You can just send them a link. Only the host needs to download the app and to go through that login process. Zoom was created more for the customer, the casual user. WebEx was created for the enterprise. And so keep that in mind. It's a little bit more robust. Zoom, as Penny said, they're making some rapid changes and trying to incorporate more of the enterprise features. And speaking of features, so the fancy background that Penny talked about, where you can blur or replace your background, you can do that on both. you can enable and disable audio and video on both. And for WebEx, I'm going to show you a screenshot here in a second. It's really easy on the bottom. Let's see, you can, a lot more features, very much more robust in WebEx, I think. At IBM, we use WebEx and Slack and Box. I'm in those 3 tools daily, or every minute of every day, really. And so we're transferring files. We really don't send many files as attachments to emails. We send Box links, and that cuts down on the amount of traffic going through your email and the security concerns as well. So you can protect a meeting with the password in WebEx. And one cool feature that I like in Zoom is you can see the connectivity strength. So if somebody drops, you know, oh, well, they're having connectivity issues, whereas in WebEx, it's kind of a, oh, they dropped. Did they have another meeting, or what was going on? So here's a screenshot. This is an intern. At NC State, intern, I should say, go Pack. And you see along the bottom the typical WebEx buttons, you know, from video or audio mute to video mute, and then the where you can screen share. And so you can select different software to share. If you just want to share your Firefox, or if you want to share your whole screen, or if you just want to share Slack, then you can do that. And then there's a chat option as well. And that's what it looks like when you have chat enabled. And you can send it to everyone or to just individuals. And I moved my particular photo, because you can drag, just like in Zoom, you can drag your presenter around. And so this is what it looks like when you have a lot of people in the meeting. This is another platform that we use a lot, called Mural. It's a great collaboration tool. Post-it notes, kind of sticky notes kind of thing. And so this is my team and I working on a project together, a user satisfaction project before the quarantine, I should say. And so pricing, I know as with everybody, price is a big factor. And so there are multiple plans. I definitely, you know, sign up for the free plan, test drive it, you know, talk to your team. What do you think you need? You know, what are your, you know, partners using? What might be easiest for them to use? If you've got a large team, I think WebEx is probably more robust. You know, meeting recordings, you can record them directly to your hard drive locally. Or you can, or it will send you a link to a meeting recording. And so WebEx is a Cisco product, Zoom is a Microsoft product. You know, I think you'll hear and you'll see reviews that WebEx sometimes has a little bit more lag. I think it's probably because there's so many people using it. It can be clunky at times. Zoom has a lot of people using it at once. There's some security concerns there for sure. You can see the pricing of the starter plan and the pro plan are really close, very similar. That's per, you know, the pro plan for Zoom is per host per month. That starter plan is per user per month. So there's some concerns, and, you know, just run your calculations on what your budget can afford. And so this is back to the main. Leaves us with about 10 minutes for Q&A. I will hand it back off to NCEDA. I want to thank everybody for allowing me to be here and for listening. NCEDA for having me.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Those were great presentations. So maybe to get the ball rolling, I'll start my video real quick. I got a question from a participant for David. are technology companies like IBM able to offer free or discounted technology consulting to economic development organizations or other small nonprofits?
Oh, that's a great question. IBM, at the start of this pandemic, has opened up all of their learning platforms for free. So I definitely encourage you, if you just do a simple Google IBM Learning search, I think you'll find all of our resources. You can also email me or hit me offline, and I can introduce you to folks that might be able to dive deeper into that, into what tools are available for nonprofits specifically and economic developers.
Thank you, David. And to your point, I know that there are several other vendors. If you contact them, they're doing special things related to coronavirus and COVID-19 with pricing and whatnot.
Right, and WebEx definitely has a special for, I think the free plan is more robust, and I think the starter plan, you get a free trial for 4 months or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question for Penny. Is there any evidence that clients and consultants are impressed by the level of tech savvy of an economic development organization in such a way that they assume it's indicative of a more competitive and tech-ready community?
Wow, that's a great question. And I think the answer is yes. And I think it goes back to, all the technology that we've always used in our work. From, when we first started doing desktop publishing. I don't know if everybody on this call even knows what that means, but, for proposals and in our marketing collaterals. And so I think definitely the way you handle a video interaction with a consultant or a client is going to be taken as kind of a surrogate for at least your organization. And so if your organization represents the public and private sector of the community, then I think that is the case. And it definitely provides an opportunity for you to up your game, during this time.
Thank you. Question for Robo. Are there preferred tools your organization uses for purposes of business retention and expansion programs?
We have been using Synchronous, and that overlaps our CRM, but what we've really been trying to do, and it's even taken to the point where I've taken some classes on it, our goal is to take everything from our available sites and buildings database to our existing industry visits to our marketing and prospect calls and getting it all into our dynamic CRM. I've even gone so far as setting it up to where you can click a contact and auto dial through our phones to try to encourage everyone to track everything from the grants we do for existing industry through the Rural Center down to our marketing proposals in one system. Because for me, that existing industry conversation is who you're working with to help recruit and how you promote your community. So it always seemed a little odd to have it separate. We're not there yet. We're still using Synchronous to track those visits, but we've actually started replicating a lot of that infrastructure within our CRM, so everything just goes to one place, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And then I also had a couple of security questions that came in. Is it true that Macs offer better security than PCs? It's funny that should be asked because we recently covered this in an agency CIO meeting. The new state CIO loves Mac, and our chief security officer said that while there is the perception that Mac does provide better security, the hackers have caught on and are going after Macs equally as much as they are PCs now. So still the best defense is a good antivirus and working closely with your IT professional that you're contracting with or have on staff. Another one is the texting feature of our smartphones also susceptible to security breaches? And the answer is yes. It's called smishing. There's also vishing, which is more social engineering with voicemail and things like that. But because text can include links and attachments and things just like email, they are subject to malicious attacks as well. And then finally, yes?
Alan, if I could just on that, I'm one that I love using the web interface for my texting, but now I'm as vulnerable as my Google Chrome password is and everything that that connects to. So you might keep stuff safe in Dropbox, but if you sign in over here with it, now you're compromised. So I think everybody should plan that they, you know, as if they've already been hacked, and look at how much stuff is interconnected in their world right now.
Yeah, I actually don't store my passwords anywhere other than a hard copy notebook. So yeah, please don't use one password across the board.
I'm not supposed to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
No, and not for all of your platforms.
And then also I had a question about iPhones versus Galaxy smartphones. Does one offer superior security? I've not actually run across that, but I can tell you what DIT's standard is. It's whatever phone that you are using needs to be able to support the current operating system minus one version. So recently we went through the Department of Commerce and we had a couple of people who were hanging on to what they claimed was the iPhone 1, and we could not get them on the current operating system, so we had to get them to break down and buy a new iPhone. I think iOS is on version 13, and I don't know if Android still does candy bars or not, but whatever the current OS is, minus one. You can also get into things with what's it called, mobile device management. Verizon offers some plans and things like that, but that gives you the ability to, you know, I left my phone in a cab, it can remotely be wiped. So if you're using an IT vendor, you might want to talk to them about what kind of offerings they have around mobile device monitoring, management support. So if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to enter them into the question and answer box, and we will answer them. All right. Hearing and seeing none, I think I'll turn it back over to NCDA to wrap up.
Thank you, Alan. To all of you, Alan, Penny, Robert, David, thank you so much for being with us today and for that very timely and valuable information. David, a special thanks to you for having a little portion of real life run through your room. A few seconds of your 7-year-old. That was pretty good. We'll follow.
This is life, right? This is where we are.
It sure is. We'll follow up with y'all in the coming months and beyond as even newer tools and technologies revolutionize how economic developers collaborate, communicate, lead, and serve. We feel we're all very important to our communities right now and the assistance they need. And I appreciate all of you for helping us today with that information. Our thanks again to NCEDA's patron and annual sponsors for their ongoing assistance and support. We appreciate what they do. You'll want to watch your emails for news of upcoming webinars and events. There's a great many topics relevant to the challenges and opportunities our profession faces right now during and after COVID-19 pandemic. Our staff's working hard to keep the knowledge flowing, and NCEDA will remain a go-to source for professional development, information, and guidance, and we have much more on the horizon in this area. I would like to take just a moment to thank our management team, L2, Liz, Lawrence, and Emily, who have provided us the ability, the organization, the ability to be able to host these webinars. And they did a very quick turnaround in learning this technology so that we could do this. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay connected, and stay confident. And thank you again for being with us.